let us talk about class and object. And class and object, when you look at it, is basically two different aspects. One is class is a data type and object is a variable. If we remember, in structured programming, we have integer x. Integer is a data type and x is a variable. But integer data type never takes any memory. So when you declare a data type, it never occupies memory unless you create a variable. So what you see here, so clearly understanding-wise, class represents a data type and object represents a variable of the type class. So we have in this discussion, we have some class like what is a class and what is an object. We need to understand the difference between them very clearly. Class is data type defined by user. That means you can define your own data type using the keyword class. And what happens in this data type, when you actually create this data type, you try to combine property, that is data, and the behavior, that is method, together to have your encapsulation. So what you have, two things in the class. You have a data and you have method. They put together to form a data type called class. But you remember, when you define a class, it never occupies any memory. Now look at object. Object is an instance which is created from a class. That means you are creating something out of a class, and you can create 1,000 objects of the same type. They carry the same property and same behavior. So using the operator new, you actually create object, and every object has a state. What is that state? State means the value which is stored in the data member. That means when you are creating an object, you are actually assigning value against the property. So an object is getting created with the value in its property. I will take you to look at an example here. Like this example is a rectangle class. And if you see here in the rectangle, this rectangle has two property that you see, height and width is very common. Height and length is the property. And rectangle may have a behavior called get area because you want to know the area of the rectangle, and you can have a display method to display both height and length. So what you do first, you define a class. How do you define a class? You use the keyword class, and then the name of the class is rectangle. Always remember the first letter is capital, and every word the first character will be capital. So you declare first two data member. This is actually data member. You have height and width. They are private type. Why private type? So that you cannot access directly from outside. Private data is data which is inside the object and you cannot access directly, but you can use method to access them. So what you have here, the next method that you see, we call it constructor. Constructor is, interestingly, is same name as the class. You can see the class rectangle and the public rectangle, but it doesn't have any return type. So it is a public always, but no return type, and the name of the class and name of the method is same. You're passing two parameters, height and width, h and w. What you do when you pass this parameter, you assign this h and w to the data member height and width. So parameter getting assigned to the data member. And you define another method display. Display method, why? Because you want to display the height and width which is within the object. Height and width, system around println height width. Now I'm showing you in this discussion a small example that I create an object. The name of the class and then the object is R. We are using the operator new and saying rectangle. That means I'm calling the constructor and passing 3 and 5. So how this 3 and 5 is going? This 3 is coming into the first H and the 5 is coming into W. So what you see that once you have done it, the object is created, and actually every object is a pointer. I'm going to show you in the next discussion, and then you call the display method. When you call the display method, you see the display is 3 and 5. So display is called with reference to object. Let me show you to the next discussion. How in this discussion we are going to see that how we use unified modeling language, UML notation, to define class and object. So this is a notation which is used to widely used in object-oriented modeling and globally known. So if you know UML modeling, you know global way of creating object and class and all so on. So take a look at the first is the class. Class is the data type. What it has is 3 chambers. The first chamber is the name of the class. The second chamber is for the data member. So data member, we have a height and width. Please remember there is a colon and then the data type. So height colon data type, width colon data type. So UML notation, you provide all data member. In the front, you said it is private, minus. Plus means public. Protected means hash. So minus height integer, minus width integer. That means rectangle has 2 private property of type integer. And now you are showing in this third chamber is plus means public. This third chamber is for the method. So what you define the first method is a rectangle constructor, same name, 2 parameter. You don't have to mention any dummy variable. And the display method, but please remember colon, the method return type. And they are all actually plus y because this is public method. So you understand the notation of the class and you have seen the different items here, the parameter, the method name and so on. Now the question is, how do we represent an object? Look, I'm using a class rectangle R is equal to new rectangle. That means R is an object. I'm calling the constructor rectangle. Constructor is a method which is called by the system. You're passing 2 parameters 3 and 5 using the operator new. And now when you do that, R is a pointer pointing to a location which is representing an object. You see R colon rectangle underline. That means R is an object of type rectangle. Its underline means it's an object. And in the body, you show actually the data member. The state of the object is height and width 3 and 5 since we passed 3, 5. So how do we draw an object is this. That means object colon class name underline and then the value that you have for the data member. Finally, we say what is actually a constructor. Constructor, it's a method name same as the class. It has no return type. It is always public and parameter can be passed. We have passed parameters. A class can have multiple constructors and it can be called by the system when the object is created. I hope you understand this whole discussion on class and object and the UML notations. And remember, we need to practice. We need to understand. We need to practice more to get this whole idea better.